I'm going to pin you, Mumon.
Thanks. I do have the option this morning, but it is totally just an option. If folks would like a visual of what I'm talking about, I do have a few slides, but otherwise I'm more than happy to just
No,
read
let me
it.
give you the option to share the screen.
Okay.
So you have that now. All
Okay.
right. And I apologize again. We've been tweaking the audio. I still hear a little bit of the echo, so apologies for that.
Testing, testing how we sound.
That's decent. All right. So let's get started, folks. Here again, welcome. Good morning. Thank you so much for your attendance, your practicing your presence. A couple times a year that we have the pleasure of having Mumon Pico come and talk to us about the Gassho newsletter. But before I kick it over to Mumon, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information about her, and also she'll probably share more information as well because she's got a really very diverse practice history and professional history as well. So hopefully we'll get some of that in her discussion. All right, Amy Mumon Pico has been a member of ASZC since the summer of 2020. It seems like it's been longer, Mumon, because you came in the midst of the pandemic. She showed up. She was actually a resident here at the Zindo. So it's been a great experience. It seems like it's so much longer than that. She took refuge in the fall of 2020. Starting as a resident, she found the Gassho newsletters and wondered why ASZC was receiving the mail from the inmates. In an effort to continue the good work of the Dharma that was started over 20 years ago, the Gassho newsletter was resurrected. And we're so grateful that Mumon resonated with this piece of work, and she is now leading that effort. And of course, she will talk about how you too could become a part of this effort and what it is, and really get the feedback from this effort. So without further ado, Mumon, thank you so much for coming and talking to us on our community practice, because this for real is a community practice and outreach. So I'm handing the virtual mic over to you without dropping it. All right.
Gassho. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see your faces this morning. So yes, I do feel like my arrival to ASZC feels like it was way longer than 2 years ago. But you know, time is bendy. That's my phrase since the pandemic is time is bendy. Time is even more bendy than it was before. So I'm here to give you an update on the Gassho newsletter. And for those of you that don't know about the Gassho newsletter, we'll give you a little bit more background. I love talking about the history of it, mainly because this work started long before I came to Atlanta, and it's important to honor the history as well. So I have just a few slides. These are mainly just to keep me on track and also to give you guys just a little idea of where we are. And my face, because of my cameras, I'm going to be looking not at you, but that's okay. You can see this, and that's important. So the Gassho newsletter is essentially, and I just want to make sure you guys can see that. Can you guys see that all right? Okay. So the past and present of the Gassho newsletter is, this is an over 20-year-old effort that was started by individuals that are still a part of the Sangha now, going into the Georgia state prisons and doing practice inside of the prisons. And during that time, the inmates were actually the ones that were producing the Gassho newsletter in-house. And I was able to find a few of those archives when I was looking through the old information, and they're so rich. You know, you can tell the care that was put into these issues when the inmates were producing them, quite substantial as well. I mean, our newsletter today is literally a front and back page, and back then it was many, many pages. And, you know, due to a lot of limitations around going inside the prisons, this was before COVID, obviously, and volunteers, the Gassho newsletter transitioned out of being inside of the prisons and transitioned into volunteers within our Sangha to send it out. So that's sort of the history of the newsletter itself, and the fact that we continue, like Fu said, back in 2020, I believe it was almost 3 years that we had not sent anything out to any inmates, and we were still getting letters, right? Because once, if any of you are familiar with the criminal justice system and mail, once our name got out there, right? Once our name and the Gassho newsletter got out there, it kind of stayed out there forever, right? And so it just kept circulating around to all of these different places where inmates can find to write in, right, and to get mail, because mail is one of the lifelines. So that's how it's still kind of been around, even when we weren't doing anything with it. And we decided when we resurrected it to kind of keep it as simple as possible. There's only 3 components in the newsletter currently. Those components consist of basic Zazen instruction, as well as a Q&A section that Sensei has so graciously agreed to answer questions, practice-related questions from our inmates. And then the last component is being able to give the inmates free resources outside of our newsletter. So for example, a few of those that we've given out are that inmates can actually get a free subscription to Lion's Roar magazine. So we, extended that resource out. And then there's another one that I'll mention today that actually involves a partnership with a ministry called Buddhist Prison Ministries. So if we talk about what happened last year. So last year was the first full year that our Sangha produced newsletters again for our inmates. We produced 2 newsletters in March and November of last year, and that totaled around 1,323 pieces of mail that we sent out, and that's representing about 45 states. It's quite a reach, and that number in our mailing list, due to, of course, attrition combined with people who are writing in all the time to be added to our mailing list, seems to hover around between the 650 to 700 mark. And I could get into details as to why that number is not consistently 700. It's a kind of a long story, but the point being is that we're sending out around 700 per issue. And last year we were able to raise those funds to do that, which totaled around $900. That was a combined effort from the Atlanta Soto Zen Center and the Jacksonville Zen Center, who also became a partner in this effort with us, both financially and in the actual practical discussions and brainstorming around newsletters. We now have a team, a small little team of us that both represented from Atlanta and Jacksonville, who, we meet and kind of talk about how are we going to continue to make this newsletter sustainable in the years to come. Last year was kind of an experimental year in terms of how do we do this? How do we work with the United States Postal Service? How do we do all of this in a way that's going to be cost effective and sustainable? So we are having those ongoing meetings to discuss those things. And I believe Fu has made it possible on the ASZC website that if you want to look at our past issues, this is just the first page of our last issue. We had several requests for images of certain Buddhist icons, and this was the one we chose of Avalokiteshvara, for people to literally like fold up or cut out and put on their little makeshift altars. Many of them had voiced that. So if you would like to look at our past issues and donate, I believe we have access to that on the website. Is that correct?
That is correct. And what I'll do is also put in a link. It's up under teachings. Gassho has its own page with Mumon's information, all the past newsletters, and we also list the newsletters as part of our blog post since Hojo writes so much of that. So yes, that's readily available, and I'll plug that in the chat for folks before you get offline so you can see where it is.
Awesome. So we of course, in our ongoing discussions as a team, we're continuing to talk about this very important topic of sustainability, primarily from, of course, the financial standpoint. So you all always have an opportunity to donate. That once again is on the ASZC website underneath, I believe, the Gassho link. So if you feel called to donate to this right now, we're more than happy to accept any donations. But we're also looking at independently finding other ways to get funding. The two main ways that we are looking into that, which I'll be presenting a lot of this information to some of the board members here soon, is looking at crowdfunding, right? We know that crowdfunding has done so many wonderful things for so many different types of ministries like this, right? When we sort of garner the populace, as it were. So we're looking at doing things like GoFundMe or a Patreon account. But even more than that, we are looking for grant funding. Our team right now is in the process, and I've literally looked through this the other day of there's a good possibility of at least 2 different foundations that we can apply for grants. And I really believe that getting grant funding is one of the best ways for us to keep this a sustainable project over time. The proposed budget for our grant and fundraising is about $800 per issue. This cost is automatically going up for a couple reasons. The big one being really farming out the manual labor of producing a newsletter of this volume. It is a lot of work, as you could imagine, to produce around 700 pieces of mail, and doing that in-house. We've done it. We did it last year, but kind of decided that it would be better to find a company that could do that for us, especially looking at getting continual funding. It makes the most sense. So that automatically increases our costs when we put that labor into the hands of someone else. So that is our proposal. Is we did find a company who actually does this a lot for nonprofits and can give us a fairly decent rate for the amount that we're looking for. We're also looking to compensate people who are really willing to dedicate themselves to this project. So those are the main things that we're looking for in terms of budget and fundraising, is to factor in just the ongoing costs of this project to do hopefully more than once a year. I'll get to that in a minute. But right now, that is what we're looking at for one issue to be produced. The budget would be, of course, more than 800 if we're looking to compensate our team members. But that, to me, feels the best. It seems like that is the direction our team is headed, is to pursue really a greater amount of support that will both engage us as a Sangha and also engage a wider audience for financial support. And those are just the names here of a few of the foundations that we're looking into. It looks like at least 2 of those are pretty good possibilities. If you guys may know that there's currently a webinar series going on right now that's co-hosted by Naropa and the Lens Foundation about Buddhism in America. And the Lens Foundation is actually tailoring their grants this year around this webinar series. So it's a really interesting approach, and one that we're kind of looking into in terms of approaching the Lens Foundation for grant. Because we're wanting to bring, the light of these 3 jewels to the dark spaces in our prisons. We're going to read a couple letters for you today. There really are, to me, the letters really speak to the amount of questions that I think new practitioners have in general, right? When I started practicing, I had a lot of questions and was asking them to a lot of different people. But I had the opportunity to ask them to actual people and get the answers right away, right? And our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated don't have that privilege. And so that's one of the reasons why we have Sensei answering some of those questions. So we kind of have a collective Dokusan, as it were, that other people can benefit from. Our goals, I've already kind of stated what the goals are here, but we're looking to get more sizable financial support, not just for this year. Our goal is only to produce one issue this year, and that is primarily because we are looking for this long-term sustainable financial support. That is the bigger goal this year than producing a newsletter, though our goal is to get one out by the end of this year. The idea, though, is that if we do get grant funding, to make it a more regular thing, possibly even quarterly, if we can get it. That would be the long-term goal, would be quarterly issues. And we are partnering with the Buddhist Prison Ministry. This is a ministry of a practitioner, one practitioner, Susan Shannon, out in Washington State. And she has done an at-home study program for inmates for quite some time. And we didn't know for sure how our partnership was going to look. And at this point, it's really more of a resource share more than anything. Susan has been a part and has, been a part of this ministry that I believe she started for a long time, has a lot of experience in getting grants for these types of things, and also in kind of the ins and outs of working with the criminal justice system. So it's been really nice to connect with Susan. She was on the list of resources somewhere. Somebody, one of our team members from Jacksonville found her, and it seemed random, but at this point, it no longer seems random that her experience is also going to be very useful. So the partnership is loose, but that's primarily what it's forming into. And we're still looking at themes. The theme that we're looking at for this issue for 2022 probably is going to center around either one ancestor highlight, or perhaps quotes from different ancestors, potentially around a theme. And actually reading a few of these letters, we might come up with a theme. So I'm going to pause here for a moment before I move on to read a letter. Is there anything that's coming up? This is the Gassho newsletter. This is what we're about.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Amy. I just wanted to point out to those present here at the Zen Center, these are the 4 letters.
Are y'all able to hear him?
Not very well.
I've got a mic, and that's turned on. Testing the microphone. Testing. Okay, is this one working? Can we hear this? Okay. So just wanted to read the address. Just these 4 that came in this week. 2 are from New Jersey, which tells you something about New Jersey, I guess. Avenel, New Jersey, and Fort Dix, New Jersey. Another one from Newton, Iowa, it looks like. St. Petersburg, Florida. And here's one from r.cuca. So is that an island or something? I'm not sure. Anyway, they are from all over the country. And this Amy's history was spot on. John Cooper and I first went to the federal pen here in McDonough. It had to be in the 80s, somewhere in the 80s, pretty early. And they were trying to get hold of, what happens is that in the prison system, they have to respond to the religious requests of inmates. And so we had a few inmates there who were interested in Zen or Buddhism. So they sent the request to us, and John and I went down there, and as we left, I told John, I said, well, we don't have to build any monasteries. They're being built every day. All we have to do is convert them. And we've actually had a discipleship in the prison system, which is very kind of extraordinary, because wearing the wagesa and so forth, they usually don't let people have anything they can hang themselves with. And we ran into some trouble as we were getting into the Gassho newsletter. There's a lot of security issues in working with the prisons. So if anybody's interested in becoming a correspondent, for instance, you cannot visit the prison that you're corresponding with. And they have a lot of horror stories to tell you about how, inmates are often basically con men, and they know how to read you, and they know how to get you to do them favors, and they sort of get you in anyway, this is the story the prisons tell. So I want to encourage everybody to participate in this program in some way if you're interested. As we all know, a majority of the inmates in prison shouldn't be there. If it were not for dumb luck, I would probably have been in prison myself at one point or another for something. So just want to support Amy in this. And we've done this before. It's like deja vu for me. We had mass mailings, things of that before. The reason that the inside produced Gassho newsletter stopped is that those inmates who were producing it got paroled or got out of prison, and they didn't continue working on it. So at one point, I just told everybody we could not continue to support the prison program. It was consuming us. We had about 8 prisons, and all we were doing was driving to prisons and finding out we couldn't get in that day because the chaplain wasn't there for some reason. Things like that, where the prison system it might be better now, but it has been just a nightmare, especially in Georgia. And some of the people, we were actually printing and publishing the newsletter outside, of course, the prison, and then mailing them in. And some of the people were crossing some lines there, which could have threatened our 501c3 for all compassionate good reasons. But I just said, as a 501c3, we could no longer endorse this. And they asked if they could continue to use our address, and we said, yes, of course, you can use our address. And so one of the individuals would come by and pick up all of the correspondence and take it, and they would process it outside somewhere. So when Brian Price joined us, and he's a prison psychiatrist, as some of you know, I brought this up to him, and I said, look, we've got these boxes of letters here, have been here for a couple of years, and we don't know quite what to do with this. And I thought his experience in the prison system might help. And so we started the new program, and Amy fortunately came along and picked up the momentum and carried it forward. So Amy, I just wanted to say, Mumon, that I'm happy to add another online group to my schedule. If you can find out how to set that up, I would be happy to be available, say, once a month for the inmates to contact me who are, say, reading the newsletter and they have some questions. And we could make that up to 90 minutes or 2 hours long if need be. One of the ones I do out of South Korea always goes to 2 hours. It just depends on the time of week, the time of the day and the time of week that I could do that. So I'm happy to volunteer to support you in various ways like that, to add my 2 cents worth to what you're trying to do. Just let me know.
Anyone else? I'm more than happy to read a letter for you all, if you'd like that. All right. Read this one. So this is from an individual in San Antonio, Texas. Dear friends, I hope this letter finds you all healthy, happy, and doing well as we transition into a new year. May you all know peace and equanimity in the year ahead. My name is, and I'm an indigent inmate, Soto Zen practitioner in San Antonio. I am writing to you all in order to ask for your help in my practice. and also want to be included in your distribution list for the Gassho newsletter. I have been a practitioner for several years now. I sit zazen for 30 minutes, 3 times a day. I chant the Heart Sutra in the morning along with the Enmeijuku Kanon Gyo. Thoughts bubble up in zazen. Waves come and go. I catch and return to the breath. When they come back, they are like a dream, and my sight, sound, even smell are filled with these dreams until I again catch the dream and gently return to the breath. What, if anything, does one do with that? The thoughts are always the same themes, usually of loss or of fantasy of how life would have been if 1 or 2 decisions in the past would have been different. Not regret, but inquisitive exploration. Is this just karma or some psychological element playing itself out? I have also noticed that I have been lucidly dreaming nightly since increasing zazen to 3 times daily. My dreams are in full color and include all 5 senses. Is this a known effect? Can it be utilized for practice rather than being a distraction? And he closes out the letter. We don't get too many like this. This was a really beautiful one. Most of them literally just ask us to put them on the mailing list. But we do get a few of those that really do, take a lot of thought into what it is that they're wanting to communicate with us. So that might be the Q&A, Sensei. We'll see. We have a couple of others that have questions, so we'll see what ends up becoming one of our questions.
Is it on? Is it on, Sensei? I'll make sure his mic is on. If it is, so try it again.
I was going to ask if you could inquire in your efforts as to whether we can get the original Frontier into the prison so they would have a copy of it to read, because it covers, it's like a user's guide meditation, as any of you who've read it realize, and on a kind of practical basis, which I think would work for inmates. And it answers some of those more sort of strange or philosophical questions such as you're bringing up. But that sounds like a good one. And when we used to read these letters, we found quite a few like that, really. Quite a few that were really intriguing. We think of inmates as maybe undereducated or, stereotypically. But what you find out is they're mostly people just like you in there, and they made a mistake or 2 here and there, and they're kind of stuck in the system now. But I would appreciate it if you could let me know what you think about getting the original Frontier into the prison. I'll ask Brian Price the same question.
The main issue I can already tell you is, do you have it in paperback? Do you have the original Frontier in paperback form?
There's an ebook form, and we're working on the audio book, and I'm not sure. No, they have not printed it in paperback, but I could either connect you up with the publisher, and they're very collaborative. They're a really nice group to work with. And you could ask that question, could they publish an edition that would go into the prison system in paperback intentionally? The second book I worked on, I don't think is that appropriate. It's coming out later this year, but I don't think it's appropriate for the beginners, especially in prison.
Sure. That's the main obstacle primarily for most people is that hardback books are not allowed.
Is that right?
That's correct, because they'll rip off the hardcover and make it a weapon.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
So yeah,
I hear you.
um, so yes, I will see if I can make that contact, because that will be the main thing, is getting people back. Happy to look into it.
Mumon, the other thing that I wanted to mention, and I think what is such a richness and the opportunity to hear the inmates practice. And for me, it's such a pleasure to see how connecting with them and understanding the questions that they have, because they have a lot of time to sit and to ask questions and think about things. So for me, that's such a richness and the opportunity to be able to bring this responses and reaction to things and questions into part of our Sangha practice as well. So I just wanted to say that, because I felt like some of the things that you've read prior and now with this gentleman's the response is just such a richness in their responses, because they have a lot of time to think about stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm more than happy to send this here. I have another letter if we want, but I'm happy to do whatever feels right.
Is everybody thumbs up? Is everybody good with another letter?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So this is from another person in Texas. As we know, lots of people writing from California and Texas, two of our biggest states. Lots of prisons there. This is, I don't know. I can't read exactly where in Texas. It's either Cutola or Cotula. All right. Dear Atlanta Zen Center, greetings. I received your letter on a sheet of paper with a picture of an enlightened being. I found it interesting that they hear the outcries of the world. I love it. So y'all or the teachers are available to answer questions, eh? So that's a very interesting feature that you offer. Thank you. I read mostly everything sent to me that is sincere. Okay, please allow me this opportunity to ask a few questions that really may be of help to me. There are 5 questions. I'm gonna read them all, because I think they're also beautiful to like contemplate for ourselves. Number 1, can you explain more about surrender to reality, including negative emotions, in order to penetrate to deeper meaning? Number 2, what is surrender? Number 3, what is reality? Is it not an idea of reality? Number 4, can surrender be explained? Number 5, can you assist? Okay, I'm sorry, there's some missing words here. Can you assist one in need of assistance with dealing with extremely difficult? Oh, okay, sorry. Can you assist one in dealing with extremely difficult personalities? And then they close out the letter.
Hojo was saying that one might. Hojo was like, he has a correct answer to every one of those. But see, this is what I was speaking about if we get our teacher to answer those questions, how beneficial that is, not only for the inmates, but for us as well. So it's a perfect example.
It really is. It really is. Well, that's all I have for the Sangha this morning. Gassho to all of you for listening.
Yep. And folks, Hojo's going to comment, and then I'll let some of the others have comments or questions.
I just wondered if we post these on our newsletter, do we have a section on our newsletter where our people can read them, people who are not incarcerated? And the other thing is, can they access a podcast? Could they, for instance, go to my podcast? They can't do that. Okay.
Yeah. And the Gassho newsletter is a running item because it's a running initiative that's in our Sangha. So Mumon, if you provide that information, I can store that or the questions online somewhere, and maybe you let me know how you want to do it. We can make it absolutely available to folks.
Happy to send it along.
And again, folks, either in the Zendo or online, if you have any questions or comments, please do speak up.
So this is the newsletter that that we can subscribe to at Atlanta Soda Zen Center.
Yep.
The one online. That's the one that gets sent to the prisons, or what is this?
Yeah, we have.
The Gassho newsletter.
Yeah, the Gassho newsletter, the things that we send to prison systems, they're actually on our website.
Okay.
So you can actually see the past issues under Gassho newsletter on the website. I can show you where it is.
I see.
So
It's a thunder silent. It's okay. Thank you.
but please do get signed up because we, in our monthly newsletter from ASZC, we do have the link to the Gassho newsletter and it has all the information as well as past issues. So I consider it as well.
Gassho.
Yep. So Mumon, I can't let you get away without really talking about if people want to, contribute and how they can contribute and, all the opportunities that are available to support you and the team. So I wanted you to be able to speak about that as well.
So the main way that we have set up currently, if you're feeling called to contribute in a financial way, is to go onto the ASZC website, go to Gassho newsletter. It's very easy to find, and you can donate directly to the Gassho newsletter on the website. This is different than a monthly contribution to ASZC. I just want to make sure that you guys know that. So your regular contributions to ASZC are different than a contribution that you would make to the Gassho newsletter. And that's part of our ongoing effort to see how the Gassho newsletter will continue to raise funds. And obviously we still will be a part of ASZC. That's the whole point of this. But how to do that financially is a whole nother question. So in terms of keeping finances separate. That being said, the website is the main way to do that right now. If you are feeling called in any other way to contribute, the main ways that we would probably want contribution outside of financial contribution is if you feel like, and I'm already going to be contacting other members that I know within our greater Sangha that have experience with grants and grant writing. But if you have experience with grants and grant writing, we want you. That would be the main contribution we're looking at right now at this time. We have a wonderful team, but that is one area where we are looking for additional minds who have previous experience.
Yeah, send me a note. Dan Jocelyn's daughter is working with STO in grant writing. She's a professional, and the grants we're working on now are for the financing of the post-production of the documentary on Matsuoka Roshi. And so she may be able to set up a separate program. She has to be paid something, but it doesn't seem to be prohibitive. It's not exactly pro bono. It's what she does for a living. But it looks like she knows what she's doing.
Hey, Mumon, and because you mentioned that you have some others on the team, I would love, can you say some of their names if they're okay, just to share the other folks that are contributing behind the scenes as well?
So we have Suki, who of course is the resident at ASZC. Many of you, I'm sure, have met him already. He's not there today, is he?
Not today.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, Suki Taylor has been amazing. He's the one who's keeping up with the mailing list. since he's of course in-house. We also have Elisa Hutchins, who is another remote member of ASZC. And then we also have 2 members from the Jacksonville Zen Center. And because I'm horrible with names and I also don't want to butcher names, Avik Muhari from Jacksonville, as well as Janice. I'm sorry, guys. Janice Procopio. Sorry, guys, if I butchered your last names. But yeah, we have essentially a handful, 2 of us, 3 of us from ASZC, and then a few of us from Jacksonville, which I just find so lovely. And if there's other of you that are listening from any of the other sanghas, this is at some point we may even look at making this an STO project, but for now, it's still under the umbrella of ASZC. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I did that specifically because I wanted folks to know that they don't have to physically be in Atlanta or in Jacksonville. We have Alyssa started out locally, but now she's back on the West Coast, I think. So, and she's still supporting. So there's no boundaries per se to be able to participate, pay volunteer. As we always say, there's multiple ways to be of service. And if this is an initiative that is calling to you, we really, big thanks to Mumon for just being the spearheader for this and picking this back up and also keeping it going. And if anyone is interested or this work resonates, this is the work within the community. It has, broad facing impacts and also both ways, bi-directional. We're helping our inmates with their practice and they're helping us too with our practice. So Mumon, is there any other comments or?
I don't think so. This year is 2022 is the year of building the foundation. That's sort of the theme that I think we all as a team agreed upon, is that this isn't a year necessarily of production. This is a year of building a really, really good foundation so that we can see another 20 years of the Gassho newsletter. So Gassho for your time.
Yeah, and I do want to do a shout out since Ungen is on, who's our teacher, our sensei down in Jacksonville, that his Sangha significantly contributed to the last ability to be able to print through donations and through their service. So Ungen, thank you so much for your leadership down in Jacksonville and supporting of your Sangha members to support this effort broadly. So thank you so much, sir. Again, last call for questions. Mumon, as always, thank you so much for your willingness to come, your willingness to do the service, and your willingness to continue to lead this initiative, and also for your practice and just your fabulous presence. That smile alone, as y'all can see her face, is just such a gift every time that I am able to experience it. So thank you so much. And we look forward to her. We'll bring her, maybe in some of her team members next round. To have the discussion. I think, when are y'all slated to send it out? I know you said one time this year. When are y'all thinking about the next mailing will be?
The goal is before the end of the year, so probably like November.
Okay, all right. And we will make sure everyone is aware. We'll make sure we'll work closely with the team to the communication, and when they get ready to send it out, however we can support. So we'll try to give you some notice. So Mumon, that's to you. Just let me know whatever you need there. All right, and as always, we cannot end without saying we cannot do any of this, what we do, our initiatives with the Gassho newsletter, Sensei's basically a place for him to stay and for his ability to continue to offer our teachings, this place for us to come and practice without the support of our Sangha. Again, whether that be monetarily for you and your volunteer work or whatever talents that you bring or just your practice, we're so grateful for that. If you're not again, thank you for our consistent contributors. If you found value in the things that we offer, we ask that you consider contributing. We have coming up, Sensei, anything that we want to mention that's coming up for programming?
We have an extraordinary Jukai that is we just happen to have somebody coming to town who wants to do Jukai, and he's from Newfoundland. He's one of my online consults, and he's also been a contributor to the book that's now at the publishers. He's a evolutionary biologist, and he sent the manuscript to me. He sent back and said, "You have to rewrite all the evolution stuff. It's all wrong." So he